We have just walked from Canal Street to the ICE headquarters here in Foley Square. There was a spontaneous protest that erupted with New Yorkers after they saw ICE rounding up people on Canal Street this afternoon, and they tried to prevent those arrests from happening, following those very heavily armed officers right here to the federal building. And this is what you have seen now, the NYPD blocking off the entrance to the federal building after they took everyone inside just minutes ago. There were several scuffles that broke out with protesters and federal agents. Murad Awadwa is part of the New York Immigration Coalition. And what have you witnessed here today?
What we've seen is that the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, HSI, ERO, and other federal law enforcement agents have been targeting street vendors who are simply trying to make a living in our city and arresting them today. They started from Church and made their way down to Lafayette on Canal Street, and ordinary New Yorkers stood up to fight back against what we're seeing happen in our streets here in New York City, which is just completely and utterly horrifying, to be honest with you.
Would you say this is a new level of enforcement that we have seen in New York, or is this business as usual? We don't typically see it in front of cameras.
Have you ever seen 50 to 100 federal agents mobbing a street and beating up people in the street? Because that's exactly what just happened. They were beating up U.S. citizens, and this is what we're seeing unfold in real time. This is supposed to be a democracy. We're supposed to be a nation of rule and law. And what we're ending up seeing is fascist tactics and authoritarian tactics being used in cities like New York right now.
Kind of paint a picture for me, for people who couldn't see this, about folks just kind of joining in and following these ICE agents in their vehicles, to the fact that they had to get an armored vehicle out here and have canisters of tear gas at the ready in case this really kind of spiraled out of control. The spontaneous protest, talk about that.
The spontaneous protest occurred because ordinary New Yorkers see other New Yorkers being hurt and vilified by these individuals. Of course, anyone who sees someone being wrongfully targeted is going to take some form of action. And to see military vehicles driving down the streets of New York City, we don't need boots on the ground. We need the federal government to actually invest in the supports that New Yorkers need, which includes reopening the government, reinvesting the resources that they're making this mockery and this theatrical show here into the services that make people's lives better.
So you told me earlier that about 40 people were arrested. Is that still the number that you believe? Are those all street vendors?
We're still trying to confirm the amount of people, but the early estimates from different sources, which we're trying to rectify right now and get the actual number, is still up in the air, but we're trying to figure out what the amount is.
All right, and what is the recourse for the people who are in there now? What will your organization do?
Well, we're trying to figure out who they are first, and which is why we went to see what was happening, and then being able to actually provide any supports that we can for them and their families in this time, which we're seeing family separation happen in real time.
All right, Murad, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, this is the end point of this spontaneous protest after hours of ICE enforcement that was happening a few blocks away on Canal Street. Again, they were appearing to target West African vendors who sell the counterfeit merchandise on Canal Street that the NYPD has been cracking down on for the past year. They arrest people at the local level, but it appears now that ICE and Homeland Security taking immigration action against those West African immigrants who are here trying to get citizenship, and then selling those counterfeit merchandise on one of the most famous streets in the city. So right now we're waiting to get a comment from ICE about what exactly unfolded here, how this spiraled out of control that ultimately led to armored cars and boots on the ground here downtown tonight, and the arrests of protesters happening as well. That is the latest live here in Lower Manhattan. I'm Anthony DiLorenzo, Pix 11 News.
All right, thank you, Anthony.